Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, little children, dogs and cats, welcome back. We are back to another rousing rendition of what we like to call here the BREADren podcast. It is a new year. I'm lazily going to stop doing the season numbers. If anybody paid attention to that, we're not doing it no more. So we'll figure it out from here. But as always, it's we. All of us are here. The gang's all here. Dr. Ajamu Loving, PhD, CFP, Destrian Wells, and Miss Alicia Brandon. HBCU Pets is sponsoring this episode right now, so make sure y'all go check them out, hbcupets.com. Ladies and gentlemen, how are y'all doing? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, brother. Yeah. Good to see y'all.
It is a pleasure. It is a stone cold pleasure to see all of us with matching backgrounds together. This is like crushing atoms. It don't happen often, but it happens.
Yeah.
So as usual, if you've never listened, it's like the game show. Our guests have no idea what the topic is today. I'm the only one. But I thought it would be fitting for us to talk about transition. And before we do it in typical BREADren fashion, I would like to raise a toast to a wonderful conversation, gems being dropped and crumbs being picked up by those who need them. Cheers.
Cheers.
So, like I said, I want to talk about transition, and I'll kick it off with a quote about William Bridges that said, "Change is an event, but a transition is the process that you go through in response to the change." So, obviously, we've I guess, transitioned, changed from one year to the next. We've all been through transition and transitional phases in our lives. And so I just wanted to tap into ways for people to like go through transitions, like how to prepare for transitions, because a lot of transitions, we were talking a little bit before we started recording, you see the writing on the wall. So you know that you're like change is coming, and the transition of like preparing for that change. And like, even like it said, change is an event. There's a transition before the change, the actual change. There's a transition afterwards. So, some people are blessed enough to see it coming and prepare for it. And then others are just prepared in general for transitions and changes to come about, like rainy day funds and things of that nature. So I wanted to tap into that. And I want to start with Miss Brandon first on the topic of transition and ways and things that you do to prepare for it. Your transition obviously was subject on several previous episodes, so I thought it'd be fitting to start with you. But when we talk about transitions, what in life and business alike, what immediately comes to your mind?
I mean, the only thing constant in life is change, right? It's inevitable. Some change or some transition or whatever you can prepare for, some you cannot. It just happens. I guess the best advice I would have is to just embrace the journey in whatever transition it is. I'm going through a transition right now with my hair, where I'm locking my hair, trying to embrace the journey. They call it a lock journey for a reason, because you just don't know what it's going to do from one day to the next. And you just really got to embrace it. The good, the bad, the ugly sometimes. And just, like I said, just embrace it and just go with it. Ride that wave.
Most definitely. DJ, we've, like I said, we've all, and as close as we are, all of us, but me and you particularly, I know of a multitude of transitions and transitional phases that I've watched you go through.
Yeah.
Just as a man, a husband, a father, and a person. When we talk about transitions and unexpected transitions, what about unexpected transitions do you think prepares prepares you for that, that next level?
Yeah. So honestly, I think whether you expect it or not, you still don't know what's on the other side, so there's this fear of the unknown always. But I think keeping the right people around you kind of goes back to that, the people aspect, keeping people around you that's going to have you lifted. My wife would like to say people that hold you accountable, so who are your accountability partners and so on. But I think it's a sum of all the experiences that you've already had that you have to trust that will put you in position to take that next step. So, you think about unexpected things that happen. It was crazy for me to say this out loud when I was speaking to this group of college students, maybe a month or two ago. Over the past few years, a lot has happened, a lot of transitions, right? So we had another child. Said child had open heart surgery. Then we went into the deepest, darkest parts of COVID. Lost my mom and grandmother in successive weeks. In between that, I wrote a short book. Outside of that, then ultimately ended up being separated from my previous employer. And so when you start saying all those things out loud, there was kind of like a check in the room on mental health. They said, well, Mr. Wells, where's your mental health right now? So I'm probably like an 8.5 or 9. Like it's probably the best it's been. And it's crazy to say that in the midst of all those things happening. But I think a lot of those things piled up at the time that it did, because the sum of my experiences allowed me at that moment to be able to process and to handle it, whereas maybe I wouldn't be able to at a different point. And so sometimes you really have to kind of unveil the cover and look at the blessing in the midst of all the transition, right? Whether that be something that you expected or something that you didn't. I mean, the prospects that I look out now to are far greater than the ones that I would have ever thought available to me. But a lot of those things had to happen for me to be grateful, appreciative, and then also maybe just have a reset on things that I either needed to wrap my mind around, wrap my hands around, take control and ownership of, because I honestly probably would have set in place and waited for a lot of these things to naturally occur as opposed to just suddenly happening. And now I have to respond to it. And so you're not going to always get the benefit of creating a foolproof plan. You're going to have to go as life takes you. And you're going to have to trust that you built a solid group of people around you that's going to support you. But then more importantly, you got to bet on yourself. So when things like that happen in your life, I think there are a few key components that come up. Again, the people around you are important, but believing in yourself and the sum of your experiences are important too, because that self-doubt can creep in, that we call that the imposter syndrome can kick in, and that can show up in any form of your life, personal, professional. But, you lean on your faith if you're a person of faith. And if you're not, if you believe in karma, the universe, whatever it is, you're going to have to find something greater than self to lean into, because you're going to need more than what you have personally to get you through it.
Time is filled with swift transitions.
Yeah.
Hold the God's unchanging hand. Doc.
Yeah.
DJ helped me. Now, look, Doc, you Doc for the takeoff ready. Hold on, Tyreek Hill. Look. Cause I gotta set you up for this, because what DJ reminded me of is being able to recognize transition.
Mm-hmm.
He said, understanding that certain things are transitional things. That's what I want to bring to you is being able to recognize transition and how important it is to be able to recognize, because some people can look at it as something and think of it as just the event. Mm-hmm. And like DJ said, like, you don't know what's on the other side of it. And then, like I said, it's transition is a process after an event and then also before an event. So recognizing the transition, how important is that?
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize the transition. I think the way that you do that is to realize or at least get not comfortable with the discomfort, but acknowledge it, right? I feel like most of the time, whether it's a positive change that we're transitioning to or a negative thing that we're sort of rolling with the punches on, right? It's that feeling of discomfort of things, small things starting to change or a big change on the horizon that you can see that feels overwhelming. So a job change, or, even something sudden happening, like a parent passed and my stepfather passed, I got divorced. Like, there's so many things. The same way that, Destrian can look at the past few years and be like, dang, I've been through a lot. I can say the same thing. And to his point, and, this will be the first time for me saying it in 2024, people are more important than things, right? And so when you have your people around you that know you, love you, support you, that circle of influence that positively impacts you, then they can help you through this period of transition, right? I think that it can be dizzying to have things changing that have once been stable, right? It's a physics thing, right? A body in motion or at rest stays at rest until a force acts upon it, right? And so that force could be an internal force that you're using to propel yourself and push yourself in a direction, and you see this change that you want to become, and you begin the transition process willfully, right? And you can take those steps, and the same way I always say, you don't have a goal until you break it down into timelines and dollar signs and have all of those elements. The same thing happens when you have this change that is in this transition that was brought about by chance or something just happening to you. But the process is still the same in terms of you having to decide what you want and then move in the direction that you want to go. And you have to do it in a way, if you want to be successful, in a way that's planned, that you have your appropriate metrics, right? And most importantly, you have the people around you that are going to help you get to where it is that you're trying to go. And so it does often go back, even though we aren't using seasons anymore, to season one stuff that we talked about in terms of how it is that you make it through life in general, right? How it is that you become successful. But it's sort of just putting it all together. I think that we live a life of transition in general when we're growing. The people who tend to get comfortable with success and growth are the ones who recognize, the same way that you do when you're working out, is that this pain that I'm experiencing isn't a pain that is hurting me, or I should say harming me, right? It hurts. It might not feel good, but when you have a direction and you know where you're going and you're taking purposeful steps to get to where you're trying to go, then you can get a little bit more comfortable in that transition, because even though there's discomfort, you don't have confusion on top of it.
Yeah,
So.
And with transitions as well, I think it pulls out this one of the deepest human emotions are fears around vulnerability, because you have to be vulnerable, because at the end of the day, there's a few things that I think are true. Number one, at least for me, I had to understand that I own this experience and I'm going to only experience it as best as I make it, right? And so I had to take ownership of that. So the people around me, if I really trust them, now it's time for me to be as vulnerable as possible. I don't know who they know, right? Who can help me get that next role? Who has experienced something similar to me that might have an encouraging word to say or what have you? So the vulnerability is at an all-time high. And you'll find out things about yourself that maybe you tucked away, maybe you hid it a little bit. But then you also find that it's a time to reconnect with people that mean you well, that you may not speak to on a regular basis. And I think it allows you to go a little bit deeper internally. Transition can also be kind of dangerous to you too, because you can find yourself teetering, you can become a loner, outsider, what have you. So you really have to take control of what that experience looks like. And then you have to be really responsible for the things that you do throughout that transition, because if you look back and it's a missed opportunity or it's severed relationships, you'll find out who you've been in a period of transition, because other people will tend to show up for you the way that you've shown up for them. And you'll find out if you've been cold or if you've been a good friend, great friend, or what have you. And, I just think that that's something that we need to keep in mind, that we don't know when our season is coming. And so when it's someone else's season, we need to be as supportive as possible. And we need to learn as much as possible from them while they're going through, so that we can have those tools to deal with things when they come our way.
Yeah. Power is the ability to define phenomena and make it act in the desired manner. I always say that quote from Dr. Huey P. Newton, just because it applies to everything. It literally does. And you alluded to it, Doc. You alluded to it too. Is just being able to define what you're going through as something that is kind of like just like, okay, like you said, Doc, it's painful, but it's not harming me. Something good will come of this.
Yeah.
So being able to, see transition and understand it. And Doc, you also said something along the lines of we live a transitional life. So my question for everybody now is, does transition ever stop? Or how do you define transition itself? Obviously there's the technical definition of it, but if we are consistently and constantly, Alicia, you said it, change is constant. If we're constantly being affected by change and thereby always going through transition, how do you define your transitions? Do you define it by, time periods? Do you define it by events? Because as we've all alluded to, things can hit at the same time. Some of us of the dark skin race, we say, it come in threes.
Yep.
They say it come in threes, and if it ain't one thing, it's another. So how do you define your transitions, Alicia?
I guess I never really thought about it. If I had to catalog it, right? Like, because it could be personal, it could be professional. It's always going to be some sort of transition or change. And if it's not, because change is not always a bad thing, right? I know we're talking about transition. I know it can be, as Doc said, painful, not harmful, but painful. But I think it always, at the end of the day, you'll find that you've grown from whatever transition it is, right? Whether it be, as Estrin, you talked about with your job, going through all of that, losing a parent, that is tremendous loss as well as growth. There's a lot of things that you grow from out of there. And I just think you just got to trust the process. But it's like going back to your initial question, as far as cataloging it, I never really thought about that. Like,
I get it, because it's like when certain questions are posed, you like, you know what? But if somebody asks you in, say, an interview, or I know y'all remember them long applications, and there'll be questions on there like, tell me when you used this skill, or one of them like essay questions where it's like, okay,
the STAR method.
Like, what was the last transition you went through and what did you learn from it? Like, if the question is posed in that way, then you like, okay, when this happened, I went through this, and then from that, this happened. If you lose someone, you go through that deep grief period. Some people do, some people don't, but you might go through a deep grief where you close yourself off. Like Destin said, like you don't want to become a person when you're going through a transition where you close yourself off because you may miss out on things. But so you got to know to become vulnerable. But then you learn that in that transitional period. And so the next time you go through any transition, you tap into the skills from all of the past transitions, but some kind of way we cataloging it.
So I think it's a couple of things, right? So at the beginning of the year, E and I sat down and we did like planning for the family to talk about
the other day, because it's only day 10 of the new year. So, it
was day one, because if you let it go too long, it won't happen. And then So one of the things we talked about was, tell me the things that you've enjoyed about the marriage or whatever. Do you know how difficult it is to talk about like the lessons that you've learned that are positive, because you hold on to them a lot? less longer than you do things that impact you negatively. And so, like, when you start thinking about transitions, I think even though we don't bucket them, if you just said, hey, man, tell me 10 things that was effed up that happened to you this year, we could run that.
But so real quick.
Yeah.
We ain't neuroscientists and neuropsychologists and all of that, but why does negative stick out so hard? And you know, for obvious reasons, what we would consider like the law, like someone's death is a major thing because there's a void.
Yeah.
But other negative things that don't necessarily create a void, if that makes sense, because, you know, not every negative thing is you lost something, like lost a job, lost a person.
Yeah.
Or, you know, it was like the day that I lost my keys for 3 hours, you know, was the day that I learned this about myself. Okay, but you remember it because, you know,
it really pissed you off. But here's, like, my wife used the word triggers, right? So because it's a repetitive thing, right? Those little things add up too. And so you're dealing with them from various stations in life, right? So you're dealing with it as an employee, you're dealing with it as a brother, a sister, a friend, a sorority sister, a fraternal brother. You know, you're dealing with all these same things from various stations of your life. So you might be in transition with a friend that, man, we might be on the outs right now where, you know, our relationship has changed and this has been a long-term friend of yours. That loss might not seem significant to someone else around you because they can't see that physical void, but that could make you tweak out over here about something completely different because these things are interconnected. That's where the vulnerability and the communication, I think, comes in to talk about what transitions you're going through, because you can't grant grace for something that you have no clue is happening, right? So a lot of these things are internal. So I think we kind of catalog them mentally, and until we're triggered by something else, it's like it doesn't even exist. And I think there's a danger in that because the people around you don't even know how to take care of you for real, right? So when you ask that question, I think there's a deficiency in cataloging our transitions in general. Yeah. Because when asked, like if you went into a team building exercise and you asked them, all right, tell me 5 great things that you all did as a team this year. Everybody's going to say something different. There's no catalog. There's no highlights. But I promise you, they've talked about the things that they don't do well so much that that's embedded into their minds. And that becomes the negative thing that you carry forward. So the transition never really happens. You're stuck there, as opposed to, like you said, maybe journaling or cataloging it to say, look at all the things we've collectively overcome, or look at all the things I've overcome in the past 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And sometimes you do need to go back and take a look at those things to encourage yourself, or realize, man, I have been through 3, 5, 6, 7 iterations of myself, and I'm on operating system number 16 at this point, and understand that I'm going to continue to have to update, because if I don't, then now I become complacent and less useful to the people around me.
Yeah. And when you were talking, I did realize something. Like, we do catalog them. It's either a positive transition or it's a negative transition. I mean, off the top, right? I mean, that's one way that I can think how I would catalog it. Like that transition from my former employer to my new employer that was a negative transition because I didn't want to leave. It left me in a very negative space. But the transition, you know, at the end of that ultimately did end up being a positive thing.
So real quick, because you set it up where something that you connotated as negative happened, a transition comes and a positive is at the end. Do you now recatalog that as a full, you know, like, do you now put that in the positive category, or do you separate this transition? Like, does it make sense what I'm getting at? It's like,
yeah.
When it initially happens, you know, it's negative.
It worked out.
A void is created, you know, and initially it's like, okay, I ain't got no job.
Right.
You don't know what's on the other side of it, like DJ said, and then everything works itself out, and it's like, oh, okay, boom.
It's
It's bigger and better that I didn't know was here. It's here now. Now, does this whole transition become a positive experience or a positive event, or is
it's fragments, AJ. So it's like a balance sheet. It's debits and credits. So, we had to make this massive withdrawal with the loss of, employment. You have to process that. It's nothing like that until you experience someone. Even if you're in a good situation, like with me, for someone to say, okay, we're going to retain however many employees, however you're going to be impacted on some deeply personal level, even though, I was very fortunate and everything went really well for me. On some level, you're saying that the people that you're deciding to keep, on some level, you're telling me that you think that they're better than me.
Yeah.
At least the ego part says that at some point you have to process that. So when people are like, hey, are you okay? Am I fine? Yes. Financially, am I okay? Yes. Everything good? Yes. But man, do you believe that someone would say that they think someone is, because that's a part of the human ego. So that was definitely a major debit from your mental and emotional account. Now, as you start going through the process real quick, as you start going through the process and you start having conversations around where you land next, what's your worth, then you start to build up more deposits that come back in. So it's really about the experience and how you take ownership of it and processing that, because that's life. At some point, someone is going to choose to go in a different direction. And if they do, what do you do about that? So you got to take the debits and the credits with the process. But go ahead, Doc.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, like in my life, all my transitions have been that way. There's never been one where it's like, oh, just all up and up, right? There's always some pain point in the overall process, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to get a PhD. Great. Now you're Dr. Loving at the end of it. But during those 4 years, you're making 18 grand a year as a doctoral student. Right? Like every day people look at me and they're like, man, you lost so much weight. Like I can see the fitness and all the rest of that. But also, as y'all who are Facebook friends with me know, every morning I'm torturing myself and posting the picture of the post-torture, result. Right. And so it really is one of those things where if you are focused on where it is that you want to be and remaining positive and optimistic with regard to what it is that you're trying to get to, then all of those changes seem less cataclysmic. And I think that's important in general, not just when bad things happen, but even when good things happen, being able to keep your head, recognizing how to work steady and doing the things that have made you successful, enhancing those things and adding to your toolbox so that you can do things to make you even more successful, right? It's more about being and the attitude that you have and the way that your mindset works in terms of how you manage those transitions than it is about the things that are happening around you and the occurrences that are happening to you. You see all sorts of results from different people who have been hit with the same type of crap, right? And one person becomes bitter and another person becomes better. One person gets set back where they're no longer working in a job, making the type of money that they were. They buckle down, do some things, they end up making more. You have another person who has that exact same occurrence, right? And they never work again. Right. And so managing change and managing transitions is so much in the head, right? It is so much in the head that if you look at the results in terms of the changes and the long-term trajectory of what's happened, you can look at some people and see the way that they are behaving and the way or the thinking that they seem to exhibit and watch as changes happen to them and then just see them fall deeper into a hole. And that's why it's important to have the people around you that know you, recognize you, and want better for you, right? Because the fact is, like, you can see it around you. right? I know when y'all call me and I'm struggling. Sometimes it's like the energy that I put out, whether it's in quick phone conversations, the posts I'm putting on Facebook, the text it is that we have, or whatever. Something says to y'all, nah, let me go check on Doc, right? Or you just doing it just out of the fact that that's what you do from time to time. It's just making sure, right? But when you have those people in your life that keep you on that positive, right?
You can pick up cues. You pick up cues and you sense it. Like, if I don't talk, like I literally, DJ, I called you, 2 days ago, and I was like, I ain't talked to DJ in like a week and a half.
Right.
And physically that feels weird to me.
Yeah.
So I'm like, like I'll text all of y'all, because I'm like, and the wild part about it is physically it'll feel like it's been like, dang, I feel like I've neglected my circle. And I'm like, and then I'll look at the last, interaction, and I'll be like, oh, this was only like a week ago. But physically it feels like, dang, I ain't talked to these people in half a month. I don't, you know what I'm saying? But that, that's how I work. But you point out something that, the growth that happens because of transitions, and something else that was alluded to is like, more and more I'm understanding that it sounds so cliche, but communication is literally the foundation of everything. Like, and that's with self and with, your circle. Anybody really is. If you cannot do it, because if I never communicate a negative feeling or emotion, or you see it or experience it from me, then you can't pick up on a cue when something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
DJ mentioned having to be vulnerable, and it's like, okay, are you good? Yeah. But I don't know where my next job is. I'm straight.
Yeah.
But I don't know where my next job is. But DJ also is exuding and communicating like, I got 5,000 interviews in the next couple of weeks, and it's also Christmas, and it's also New Year's. But I'm out here.
Yeah.
Me? You already know what my suggestion was. I was like, listen, man, pick an island and go. Just go. DJ like, nah, I'm finna get on these interviews, man. I'm finna.
You gotta level up.
But and then Doc alluded to it too. Is like, it's two sides to a coin, where it's like, okay, it happens, and you could literally just be like, I'm financially good, but like you said, the ego is like, and so now you dwelling on like, dang, they really think all them other people was better.
And you got to think about it. It's no knock on anybody else, because
sometimes it is, but most of the time it's not.
Well, my situation, it wasn't a knock on anybody else. It was more so, that was my motivating factor to not go wallow. It was more so, you know what? You still him. Like, let's go. Because it's a difference. Again, this goes back to how you treat people when you up, because it's going to matter later. So I knew that I could pick up the phone and I could start making phone calls and get some motion going. But it was also very humbling leaving my office, picking up the phone to call home to say, hey, I want to just let you know I'm about to spin the block and head back to the crib. For what? Well, you remember that thing I was telling you might be going down? Yeah, that happened at work, right? Are we okay? Are we good? Yeah, I'll sit down. I'll run you through everything when I get home. That's a humbling thing for somebody that lives with me to not have to worry about nothing, to all of a sudden, hey, I want to make sure I see everything, know everything, just in case I need to do something different. Do we need to move different? No, we're good. Yeah. And that's where the ego comes in, that like, you know what? I don't want to have to answer questions like that. I want that security blanket to always be there.
But that also comes from growth from prior transitions.
Absolutely.
And just proper preparation prevents piss poor performance.
I will say this is important, because look, you do get that message when you get let go. Like, oh, the same way you get picked last or whatever in a pickup game or something like that, and it ain't never happened to you, right? If you're an athlete, that never happens. You get picked last or something like that. You feel that, right? But part of how, now internalizing it is all, being organized and knowing what productivity that you have, but also having that circle around you that is familiar with your work and what it is that you've done. So let there be no question about it. BREADren's work has been above average and high quality since I've been working with them. And I've been working with the man since 2016, right? It's not just me that thinks that because we.
My bad. I just looked at the calendar. It said 2024, and 16 is a long number away from 24.
It's been a minute, man. Right. Ooh. And so it's one thing to see somebody do a good job from time to time. But I've been around BREADren throughout the year all the time. Right. And so you see consistent excellence. So it's easy for me to be like, oh, okay, this happened. I know from having been out there that there will be people who are rearing to get you, right? So you don't have no time to wallow in, am I good enough, when everybody around you is like, I can't figure out how it is that from among the people that are there, they let you go, right? So it in part is about you being competent and being on top of what it is that you're doing from the beginning so that you can have that internal confidence, right? But the other part about it is that the relationships that you cultivate along the way, that whole way up thing that BREADren was saying, right? Those relationships and the way in which you treat those people when the next transition comes, whether it be a promotion or it be, it's something where you're being let go, those next people are going to be there that you have made those connections with through that or to that next transition, to whatever degree that you have them involved in your life, right? And the funny thing is, whether or not that transition is going to a positive thing or a negative thing is also impacted by those people. So when you tell them, hey, I got let go, their next deal is good because I want to promote you. Now you're starting to deal with some sort of spiritual level stuff, right? And depending on what it is that you believe, this is where that faith and the faith of a mustard seed and all the rest of that takes that optimism that you have and crystallize it into something that you can actually use, right? A guidebook, if you will, the Bible, the teachings that it is that you have to take yourself to that next level, right? Whatever the change was. That's the way in which I learned what it's like to be a Christian and have faith in God and grow on that. But if you think about it, it is an inherently positive way to view all of the changes that come into your life, even if you're dealing with Job level crap. That's what it's about. It's about getting over stuff, moving on, and recognizing that there's better later and paradise over the horizon. But if you work like that and you live like that and you treat people well like that, then you will always be a rich person, because anytime somebody sees something happening to you, bad or good, they're ready to help and be a part of it and push you in a positive direction. That's Alicia, a beautiful thing.
Alicia, I'm going to come to you, but real quick, as a Black gardener, I've been growing for a couple of years now. And when you said the faith of a mustard seed, something that has been prevalent in my mind and really is my physical, tangible proof of faith is I've been growing lettuce for like 3 years now. And this was my first year. Well, last year was my first growing season where my lettuce plants didn't grow to be edible. The heat and other factors made them bolt, which is when a plant knows that it should not spend its energy and resources to grow to be fruitful, but it should rather grow to reproduce. So it's a lot of plants do it. It's called bolting, where instead of my lettuce plants just growing leaves for me to be able to pick it and eat it, it exerted all of its resources and energy to create seeds. So I've got thousands of lettuce seeds, and a lettuce seed, much like a mustard seed, which grows mustard greens in the mustard plant, is very, very tiny. And the first time I actually held one in my hand and sorted them out, because each pod gives you like 20, and the pods are like the size of like a peppercorn. Like a full piece of peppercorn is like that size, and you squeeze it, and about 20 even smaller little black seeds come out of that. And I'm like, from that little seed literally comes a full head of lettuce. I grow other things that you all are aware of. From that small seed, I can get a 8-foot tall plant. Mm-hmm. I can take an acorn that's smaller than a dime and get a mighty oak tree. So seeds are truly the full manifestation, the physical, tangible resource of like seeing faith, because you've seen it happen. But when you really hold it in your hand, you see how minute it is. You like, oh, all of that starts with that. And if we being honest, it don't need them enough but a little bit of dirt and a little bit of water. You ain't got to do nothing to it. Mm-hmm. A little bit of dirt, a little bit of water. Faith without works is dead. But Alicia, I wanted to come to you in terms of transition because, you know, all of us are small business owners, but your small business is one of the few that has a, you know, fully tangible product. You know, Doc, DJ, and I mostly, you know, do services, you know, consultation and things of that nature. But you have a physical product, and we've talked about it in previous episodes. And if you haven't heard those, definitely go look to those. But with HBCU Pets and having products, like the transition that goes along with going, you know, the transitions of owning a business, the different changes that happened. And I know we talked about, I know it might have been with us where we, you know, you were a vendor at homecoming for the first time ever. Mm-hmm. And that event just like, oh, you know, now the preparation for something of that nature is, but I wanted you specifically to talk about the transition that we incur as business owners. I won't even say small business, because small business, according to the government, I think as long as you got less than 3,000 employees, that's right. Everybody, really.
That's everybody.
That's exactly. That's how that COVID money stretched long with McDonald's and them. But yeah, let's talk about the transitions of business owners.
Again, I'm gonna keep saying only thing constant is change. It's a lot of transition. It's so funny because my boyfriend had on an HBCU pet shirt, and it was one of the very first shirts that I made. And just looking at how small the logo is compared to the logo that I put on it now, that it was very humbling. And he don't know it, but I wanted to cry a little bit, like, because I know the learning, the research, you know, the trial and error that it took for me to get to that one logo to the one that, you know, that I produce today. And yes, and it came really just from feedback, like somebody that cared about me and said, hey, this is dope. I love what you're doing. But sis, you need to make that logo a little bit bigger. Like, you need to put that on there. So, you know, if I'm across the room, I can see it. It needs to be bigger. So it went from like a 3x3 to a 4x4, but that's tremendous, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it sounds small, but if you look at it side by side, I wish I had a product to show you. That transition was just, I mean, to me, I personally kind of leveled up from that, because I think I was playing myself too small. If that, you know, if that makes sense.
You didn't want it to be gaudy. You like, that's too big.
That's too big. And I'm like,
that's that self-doubt come in a little bit like,
ooh, if that ain't a sermon right there. You thought it needed to be one way. Oh, but God.
Hey, but if y'all want to see it, you can go to hbcupets.com.
There you
Absolutely.
go.
You can see it. And you know what? Order it so you can physically see it, like that mustard seed there.
Yeah, get you two. Mm-hmm. And that way the logo is double as big because you got it on two shirts. There you go. And one for the dog too.
No, right. I definitely went through that same thing with LaFlight, and like I'm a little embarrassed by the first logos, because there's a gap between the F and the L, because the way that the font was naturally created. And there's a gap, a big gap too. And for the first year, well, the first couple of years, I didn't actually notice it. And I've been designing stuff since middle school, but I didn't actually notice it. And then one day I looked at it and I was like, my God, there are people that are wearing this defect. Because at that point, it was a defect for me.
For you, but they didn't even know.
Didn't know, supported it, still going. And then I fixed it. And then my confidence level increased just because I fixed that faux pas. Yep. And then I was like, oh. And then I looked at it like how we look at certain collectibles, where it's like if it's a defect in it, it's like, it's now worth more than the originals, like coins that have double stamps or something like that. It's like, oh, that's rare because it's not supposed to happen. I was like, I got a bunch of stuff out here that got.
That's part of your growth process. That's part of the journey.
Yeah.
So you talked about, how do you timestamp things and how do you keep an account for it? It's little things just like that. The imperfections become the things that make you a better version of yourself. So with that, you've been asking a lot of questions. So I'm going to flip it on you and maybe we can go around the room. So we're starting the new year. A lot of people do resolutions. I kind of don't, but to each his own. But what was your biggest transition in 2023 heading into 2024? We start with you, AJ.
I mean, when you ask the question, it makes me think of what it actually was, because I don't want to tie it to an event. I want to see what my year looked like as a transition, because if I can catalog it as, each one of these years according to what we on the Roman who calendar we use?
Roman calendar.
The Roman calendar, yeah.
The year 2024 year.
Yeah, I don't know the Gregorian, whichever one. It's the year 2024. My 2023 is a transition. What that 365 days, and I think for me, it really was really being able to tap back into my actual faith, like my core of faith, because there were certain things that happened, and Q4 was really, really hot. It was like really hard, and in several areas. To where I'm starting this year and I'm embracing my same mantra from the beginning of last year, which is progress over perfection. And I'm running it back for myself, because it's like, and I've had a saying that I had on my wall in like middle school, Vince Lombardi, like, long as you chase and perfect, like I can't even remember what the actual quote is. It's
the
like
pursuit of perfection.
The pursuit, the pursuit of you can't be perfect, but as long as you chasing perfect, you good. And so I've finally co-opted it and tweaked it for me, where it's like, as long as I'm doing a little bit better, I don't want to be stagnant. Stagnant water breeds mosquitoes. I always want to have a ripple. I always want to have a wave. I always want to have movement, motion. I know that's a catchword right now, but I don't want to become stagnant in anything. I need my growth. I need transition. I need change. I need revolution. I need everything to happen in a direction so that I don't become stagnant. So as long as I'm making progress. So for me, my biggest transition was really tapping back into my core of faith and like, I'm going to be all right. It's going to be all right. This is part of everything. Like right now, the roller coaster in a dip, but I see the hill coming up. And the view at that top going to be beautiful. And maybe at the top of this hill, we coast a little bit.
Yeah.
It don't become that drop where my stomach feels weird. But it's all good, because I don't want the ride to end. So that's it.
Yeah.
Alicia, what's up?
2023. I would say was a year of vulnerability for me, really leaning into that vulnerability as it relates to my business as well as personal life. Business, because I don't know everything. It was a lot of times, like for my pop-up shops, I had to ask people for help. Hey, are you available to stand in the heat with me all day? You know what I mean? And it takes a lot for me to ask people for help. I know it shouldn't, because I'm always giving help. I'm raising my hand to help people, but this year was the time for me to cash all them coupons in.
Right.
And luckily people were very gracious to do so. And then on a personal level, like just in my relationship, being vulnerable. I've been single for a long time. Now I'm not. And so just tapping into that and, allowing a man to be a man. I ain't gotta, be misindependent and do it all, or at least act like I don't know how to do it and let him do it.
Right.
And he'll probably hear this when he listens to it, but I was just playing.
I just playing, dog.
I'm just kidding. But yes, a lot of vulnerability. And I know you mentioned that too, BREADren, as it relates to like your job search and stuff like that, and really asking people for, for help, or maybe plugging you for referrals or whatever the case may be. That it takes a lot. And I've been there. I don't think people understand how hard, you know what I mean, that can be, especially when you've been able to, quote unquote, do it on your own. But in all actuality, we don't do anything by ourselves. We don't.
That's true. That's true. Great.
There's only truly a few things that we do alone. And those are the things that someone has taught us to do for ourselves. But other than that, you know what I'm saying? It's the things that you do in the bathroom. Don't nobody else do it for you. You do it alone.
As long as you possibly can.
Hey,
right.
and look, in the beginning and in the end,
right,
there's a great possibility that somebody else gonna have to do it for you.
And to that point, all of life is a transition, right? You transition into Alicia's point, like change is constant. Like you transition, life is a transition from birth to death. Now that can sound very, very depressing, right? You think about it, like we only here to die, right? Or
are we though?
Right, exactly. Or are we here to simply live, and living wouldn't even be close to as exciting if it was just something that could happen forever. You never get old, you never get tired, you never then the living part isn't special, right? The life itself is special because of the fact that it is a transition and will end. I think that is an important thing to recognize, and like all of the stuff that you're doing, right? Is because then you don't get caught up in the transition and think, well, because I'm at this place now and I transitioned here, I can treat people any way I want to. Ask Diddy about that.
Whoa. Wow. Congratulations for the first hot take of the year.
You see what I'm saying, though? Ask him about that. Those types of transitions, and the way in which you embrace a mindset that it can either be powerful and helpful, or destructive and hurtful, right? You know how people talk about how you treat the people on the way up is, are we not seeing this in real time with folks? So to answer BREADren's question about what's going on from 2023 to 2024, for me, I can't get into the exact sort of details of each and everything that I want to happen. I don't make resolutions like that, but what I do is try to set a standard for how I'm going to be, and then set certain goals, right? And so I want to be fitness minded. I'm going to be more fastidious in my financial management and growth oriented in my savings, right?
Hold on, it's like
how I want to be.
Run that word back, and I don't even know how to spell it. The Google what the definition is. Fastidious. Go ahead, yeah. I don't even know how to spell it.
Very deep. They're very detail oriented, right?
Okay. But I ain't gonna ask you to spell it, but Google gonna know what I'm talking about. I'm gonna give the people the truth now, because that one hit me right there. Because I was like, does he mean studious? Fastidious is that is not how I thought it should be spelled. First off, very attentive to and concerned about accuracy and detail. I call that anal.
I mean, that's another
that's
another word for it, but not necessarily.
Like the actual definition of someone who, like anal. Yeah, like someone who's anal or an analyst is someone who is, very hung up on detail, like OCD. I didn't mean it like that. I'm sorry. I just a big word. You shortened it.
Yeah, my point was even within a year, right? Like if I say, hey, I'm only going to eat my caloric. I'm making a resolution. I'm only going to eat 1,500 calories a day, and then the first weekend, right? Some crap happens. I eat a whole bunch of stuff. Now I have broken my resolution, right? Mm. And that is where a lot of people leave it in that first week. And so that's why I try to concentrate on ways of being instead of just an exact thing in terms of what it is for a year. So I believe in 2020, I had the year of yes, right? Oh. I was like, no matter what, people ask me if it's something that's positive and can have expansion. Y'all, I don't know if y'all remember the year of yes. And I was saying yes to everything. And then by the end of the year, I had all of these opportunities that were in front of me because of the fact that I said yes. And there are still new opportunities being created or that have been created because of the fact that I was saying yes to things. Mm-hmm. And so whatever it is that you choose that you want to focus on, I would say focus on it, but recognize even within that, there's going to be ebbs and flows to it. And it's not going to be perfect. And it's still worth your effort, even though you haven't achieved perfection in it. I think even more so, right? Like with losing weight, you're going to have weekends where you gain weight. You're going to have you've been constantly working out and constantly eating the right things just based on water, based on how hot or cold it is, based on when in the day you weigh yourself. You're going to have different weights and fluctuations. So you're not likely to have straight line weight loss, but you can't just observe just on a day-to-day basis and say, okay, well, I did 30 sit-ups and then I'm not lighter. I'm actually heavier. So this stuff doesn't work. You see what I'm saying? Because part of that
is the communication and knowledge of knowing that that's going to happen. Like there is a such thing as a plateau when it comes to weight loss, weight gain, and just weight period, unless you do something completely drastic and understanding like, okay, just because I ate a salad this morning and went and did 50 crunches and some pull-ups, it's not going to happen like that. But part of that is understanding that that's a possibility and, you're pretty much guaranteed, very good likelihood. But if you don't know that, now you self-deprecate.
Yeah, but see, and if you are fully embracing the idea, like, okay, I'm going to be about my fitness. All right, well, then what does that mean? That means, I should probably read some things from some people who have either lost weight in the way that I'm trying to do it, or some people who are experts on doing so. Right. And almost every expert is going to tell you, no, don't just look at the scale. Not to say don't use it at all, because if you do, you're going to recognize those fluctuations.
You need to look at your body mass index.
Right. Don't let a fluctuation.
How much fat you turn into muscle is your buff.
There's so many different variables in there, right, that can change that one metric. But if that's all you look at, and you say, all right, well, that's my goal. That's my resolution to lose weight. And then every day that, the number on the scale isn't getting smaller, you're getting more and more discouraged and more likely to cheat on your diet. And so, what it is, the way in which you're trying to eat, or way in which you're trying to be.
Hot light came on.
You done gave up. The third week in January, not just gave up on your idea of the resolution itself, but on the idea of being fit, right? You're not going to even try anymore because you're like, I broke the resolution. And that's, to me, that is an example of allowing a transition to defeat you, or a change to defeat you, right? Because there's going to be ebbs and flows along the way, right?
Did you fall off? Did you fall off your regimen already on day 10? Are you talking to yourself?
When I say this, I fell off all year. because here's the deal. I've been posting these Facebook pictures after every workout since like 2020 or something, right?
Mhm.
So all of those, and I was looking at, it was the first time that I've been looking at my 1 year back pictures, and my 1 year back pictures look better than my pictures today. I looked at my pictures today. I was 237.
Facebook
Last
memories
year,
are
this time, I had
Facebook
cuts and
memories are
everything.
ooh boy,
Ooh, they
it's a
hit you.
dangerous thing now.
I was 217. That's 20 pounds. Now, look, over the course of a year, like I can fluctuate a whole lot. But if I'm honest with myself about last year and my nutrition, it wasn't where it needed to be.
You did send me a lot of pictures of your brother's ribs, and you wasn't even with him. But look,
exactly.
If that was on my timeline consistently, I'm gonna go get me some ribs. We all sent each other a lot of grill pictures.
We do. We do. We do.
So look,
we're gonna get Alicia some of them grill sandals. She's gonna have some Grill Master 13s by the time like a season or two.
I'm gonna tell. Look, I'm gonna tell Alicia where to go. I'm gonna tell Alicia where to go to get her some HBCU pet slides, because I put on my little flight slides and go right out that back door.
Yeah, there you go. Those
the grill. Branded slides all 2024. If you ain't got the brown joints, you know which ones I'm talking about.
The classics. Those
they put socks on with them.
Right.
If you ain't got them, if you of the youngest, it's branded slides. Whatever your brand is, put your brand on some slides and get you some. If you don't know where to get them from, hit us up. I'll tell you where to go. But yeah, look, branded slides. Matter of fact, I need to order me another pair.
I'm almost at that age too, by the way. I feel like I am at them brown sandals with I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it.
We give you some sandals that say loving.
I'm gonna give me some of them Air Monarchs. That's what I'm gonna get. The Monis.
Hey, my daddy been wearing them.
Put on some of these fat.
My daddy been wearing them since the 90s, and let me tell you something that I found out. They're comfortable. Okay, let me tell you.
Oh, I knew they were comfortable. Comfort. Them brothers with them flower shirts on.
Comfort and convenience.
They wouldn't be. They wasn't gonna rock. They wasn't gonna rock that if it was.
And you bring up a good point. Transition. We're all moving in a direction. Okay, and true. Things are happening. Physically, mentally, and let's just say recognizing that getting the growth from that is hard, because the aging transition of just, the transition of knowing like, oh, that number is right there. Mm-hmm. And I told Shan the other day, I was sitting there, I was like, what's different? Something that I've noticed that's like really different right now, like lately, my knees are cold.
Man, look, bro.
And I was like, it hit me. I was like, I always saw my granddads
rubbing their
knees. And now I get it. I understand it wholeheartedly, man. My knees are cold.
Yeah.
To where it's like, okay, basketball shorts in the house.
Hey, man.
It might be that time for me to transition to nothing but them them old school pajama pants. I got some in there with Tuskegee on them. Number pajama pants now, because my knees are cold.
Man,
transition.
Look, bro. I don't even want to tell you about
pants, pajamas.
I don't even want to tell you about all the other stuff that's gonna get cold.
Hey, like, all right. Hey, here's what we finna do now.
I don't want you to have to carry this, but I promise you in these next 10 years, brother, it's gonna be, you got to be mindful about all things.
Like my clavicle gets cold, so that's why I wear scarves. It's not because it's fashionable, because my neck get cold.
Everything.
My bones. Look, now I understand like my bones are cold.
Man, you mess around, turn your head and sneeze, and the muscles in your neck lock up on one side. I'm telling you, it's all kinds of stuff.
I got a crook in my neck that's been here for 7 weeks at this point, and we are a thing. You understand?
Yeah, y'all together now.
Hey, until I go to a chiropractor, we a thing. It's managing. Like, hey, I deal with you in the morning and a little bit at night, but during the daytime, don't bother me. And that's how it works. Like right now, fine.
Yeah.
Late on tonight, I feel it. It's okay.
No, I'm telling you, man, Raisin Bran and oatmeal finna start tasting good to you.
Oh man, look. That's one thing about me. I was raised.
Good.
I was raised by the elders. Raisin Bran always been good to me. I ain't even gonna lie to you. Me and my grandma sat and ate plain cornflakes at midnight often. I just always I was introduced to it, and it was like, okay, this is good. I ain't got no problem with me and raisins, Sun-Maid. Come on, man, eat them for snacks. Everybody ain't able. Prunes is a different story. Look, this is what we finna do. Because this has been great. But I want to go around now, as we often do, and to end it out is let's give the people tangible skills to prepare, recognize, embrace, and manage transition. And I'll be cliche because Alicia, go first.
Not cliche.
No, ladies first, but I don't want to be chauvinistic if that applies to the situation. I don't know. I just like using big words. The doc always be throwing out fastidious, so I want to use big words too. But yeah, let's get some tangible steps, and it could be personal steps that you've used or you plan to use, because as we've now figured out, we do kind of categorize it by the year. Like, oh yeah, 2020 was a hard year for us. COVID. 2008 was a hard year. Obviously major events and things are tied to it, but especially if how big the event is, it's like that whole year was just, some of the years we like, you know what? 1994 was pretty easy. You know what I'm saying? Everything was cool. 99 was all good. High boys were still out. You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously these were years when, we were young and didn't have things to worry about. Now we have things to worry about. But let's get some tangible steps for transition and handling them.
Well, as I open with, change is inevitable. The only thing constant is change. Some of the transition you can prepare for, some of it you can't. The key is really just to trust the process and embrace the journey. And we talked a lot about relationships. Each of us, I think, kind of, talked about that a little bit. And relationships are key, because in your transition, whether it be positive, negative, 2009 or 2024, those relationships are going to be key. You may have some people that you need to lean on, ask questions, need a favor, so on and so forth. So just be careful about, as you going up, you still got to come down. Be careful how you treat people, because those same people that you do dirty, you may need them in your season of transition.
Excellent. Doc.
I'd like to echo a lot of what Alicia said there. I would say specifically for men, right? We get into this ego space and we get there hard sometimes. And that's how you can end up lost in transition. I say lost in translation. You can get lost in transition because you start thinking, especially when it feels like a step back, you start buying the rap on you that, either you are not as good or whatever. The same way that you can use positive affirmations to talk yourself into doing bigger and better things, you can use negative affirmations and negative reinforcement to talk yourself down and put yourself in a position where this transition or this quick change that happened sets you on a trajectory of negativity, right? And so that was my point about being better or being bitter. Recognize that as things are forced upon you in terms of change, okay, let's look at what it is that I want. Let's break it down into the time frames and the dollar signs, or the amount of time it's going to take in terms of investment for me to get there, readjust and get to where I'm going, right? But this isn't done in a vacuum. A lot of times that transition, that's an opportunity. When there's that change out there that not just you know about, but other people know about, now they can reach out to you. That transition a lot of times removes a barrier or a boundary that was there before, whether it was self-imposed or imposed by who you work for or whatever it was. Now that barrier isn't there. Focus on forward or upward momentum from that change. Don't focus on the negativity that you perceive based on that transition, or even the unreadiness or uncertainty as a loss, right? Because if you do that and you internalize that and you start moving in that negative direction, right? The next year you're going to be sitting up looking like, oh, what I wanted is even further away. So that's my point, is stay focused on moving forward, even in your transitions.
DJ.
All right. So for me, I would just say a lot of us are really good when we do a SWOT analysis. We lean into our strengths and we can effectively communicate that and we can talk confidently about that. But in order for you to be prepared for transition, you do need to understand your blind spots. So where are you weak and where do you have opportunities to improve? Because ultimately that limits your threats. And so I would say you need to focus on those two areas as you continue to go along your year, your life, your journey. Make sure you're looking at your blind spots, your weaknesses and opportunities. And then specifically for me, when I think about 23 going into 24, I want to give a little bit more care and attention to the feelings of the people around me. Because what I'm realizing is that for me, my blind spots can come in those areas. While my strengths might be vast, my opportunities to improve typically rest on how my words make other people feel, whether I use that in the direction of truth or not. That's an area of more intentionality for me. So making sure that my impact and my intention lines up. And I think as you transition, if your impact and your intention are in alignment, you'll have people that'll show up for you. But when your intentions and your impact get out of whack, you're going to find yourself at a disconnect with people and you may not quite know why. So take a look at your blind spots and focus less on your strengths, but strengthen those areas of weakness and opportunity.
As usual, this has been a fun trip to take with you all, and I always appreciate you all for taking the time to do this with me. It's an easy feat, but it's not often done. I won't say that this is not easy. It's easy to get us together. It's just, in this forum, it's just not often done for obvious reasons. Y'all are very busy people. So we talked about transition, and obviously this topic, because I couldn't remember if this was a topic that was on my mind when we were texting before Christmas. But some kind of way, this is what came back. And I was like, oh, that felt natural that we should talk about this, because we're right at this point where it's like, okay, going to the next year. And, most people talk about resolutions and things of that nature. And, I'm pleased as usual with how the conversation fleshed itself out. But something that I want to ask people, if you've listened thus far, is, are we leaves on the tree to catch the eye, or are we the leaves that turn brown and provide that pile of leaves for a dog or a child to jump in and enjoy that fall moment? They're both valuable. They're both looked at totally different, though. The leaf that's shining brightly green on the tree catches the eye. It's totally different from the leaf that shines red, orange, and yellow in the fall when it changes. And the leaf that's brown on the ground don't get looked at the same way as either one of those, but they're all valuable in their aspect and their role. And it's all part of the transition. So no matter what point you are at in your transition, being able to be vulnerable, recognize your transition and embrace your transition, and to, be able to catalog and really understand the growth that takes place during transition. They say pressure bursts pipes, but pressure don't just go from 0 to 100. It's a transition. It starts at 0 and gradually goes up at a certain rate to burst that pipe, but pressure also builds diamonds. But it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. And transition is a thing that happens over time. Change is a thing that happens over time. So, time is filled with swift transitions. Hold to God's unchanging hand is what most Christians will subscribe to. Having the faith of a mustard seed and understanding that you have really two options. There's in-betweens, there's spectrums and scales, but it's really whether you're going to be better or bitter. Thank you, Doc. So the best thing that I can tell you to do and finish this off with is to pay attention and consistently do that. Because as long as you're doing that, you can do all of the things that we've prescribed for you to do. Pay attention, be vulnerable, communicate, embrace, recognize. And then your transitions will still be what they are, which is transitions. But how you go in, how you are in, how you come out, and how you on the other side into the next one, because it's going to always happen. Don't be stagnant. That determines the type of person you are. And all we want to do is build better people while we're building ourselves. We're talking to ourselves a lot of times, and we thank you for listening. As I said at the beginning, this episode has been brought to you by HBCU Pets, hbcupets.com. Even if you ain't got no pet, you know somebody with them. Get them something. Thank you to my illustrious co-hosts, Miss Alicia Brandon, Mr. Deshaun Wells, Dr. Ajambu Loving, PhD CFP. Y'all can find us on social media at BREADren Pod. That's BREADREN, spelled like bread, because we always get bread and we always talk about bread. At BREADren Pod on Instagram and at BREADren Podcast on Facebook. Dr. Ajambu Loving at Dr. Ajambu Loving. That's not doctor spelled out. That's DRAJAMULOVING at Dr. Ajambu Loving on Instagram. And Loving on Money and You on Facebook. Empower, Engage, Execute on Instagram. Deshaun Wells, if you can find him anywhere else. And HBCU Pets, Miss Alicia Brandon on Facebook and Instagram. HBCU Pets. And if you don't know what that stands for, this might not be the place for you. We love y'all, and that's the best thing that we can do for you is love you. Peace.